Alta Kids, it's Miss Crystal here with you this morning. If you notice, I have all kinds of stuff on the table in front of me. As we start this morning, I want to do another science experiment. I want to see if you can determine which of these objects will sink and which will float. If you think that they're going to float, raise your hands up high. If you think they're going to sink, put your hands down low. Let's start. This is a styrofoam pumpkin. Do you think it's going to float or do you think it's going to sink? This is a wooden block. Do you think this is going to float or sink? This is a plastic sheep. Do you think it's going to float or sink? What about a Lego? Float or sink? What about a plastic ball? Float or sink? I have a plastic bear. Do you think the plastic bear is going to float or sink? This is a plastic cup. Do you think the plastic cup is going to float or sink? And last but not least, a foam block. Do you think it's going to float or sink? Wondering, what do all of these things have to do with our Bible story today? Well, in today's story, Jesus did another miracle when something that was supposed to sink actually floated. Do you know what story I'm talking about? If you just said the story about when Jesus walked on water, you are correct. Let's take a look at this week's story, but first, check out our family challenge. For next week's family challenge, show us your art. From the very beginning, God created His people to be in relationship with Him. Because God is holy, He cannot be around sin. When sin entered the world, it separated us from our good God. But God had a plan. He had a plan to rescue the whole world. He was going to send Jesus to take the punishment for our sin, so that we could have a relationship with Him again. The Bible tells of this story. On each and every page, we see that the Bible points to God's great rescue plan, Jesus. Jesus' earthly ministry and the miracles He performed were part of His purpose in bringing glory to His Father. His miracles prove that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. They strengthened people's faith and met people's needs. Jesus calmed a storm to show His disciples He is God. Jesus' disciples knew He was a good man, but when He calmed the storm, He showed that He is God. Jesus rules the sea and commands its waves. Jesus miraculously fed a crowd with 5 loaves and 2 fish. By feeding the crowd, He provided for their physical needs, and the next day He called Himself the bread of life. He showed He is able to satisfy our souls forever. And today we see that Jesus also showed He's God by walking on water.
Jesus had been teaching crowds of people by the Sea of Galilee. It was getting late, so he told his disciples to get into the boat and go to the other side of the sea. Jesus sent the crowds away and went up on the mountain to pray by himself. That evening, the boat was far from the shore. The wind blew and the waves tossed the boat around. Jesus was still on the mountain alone. Around 3 a.m, Jesus came toward his disciples walking on the sea. When the disciples saw Jesus, they were terrified. "It's a ghost!" they cried. Right away, Jesus spoke to them. "Have courage, it's me. Do not be afraid." Peter answered, "Lord, if it really is you, tell me to come to you on the water." So Jesus said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and started walking on the water toward Jesus. But when Peter saw how strongly the wind was blowing, he was afraid. Peter began to sink. "Lord, save me!" he cried. Jesus reached out his hand and grabbed Peter. Jesus said, "You have little faith. Why do you doubt?" They got into the boat and the wind stopped. Then everyone in the boat worshiped Jesus and said, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Jesus proved that he can be trusted. His miracles, teaching, death, and resurrection showed that he is who he says he is. Only Jesus can save us when we look to him in faith.
What was the disciples' response when they saw Jesus walking on the water? A. They cheered. B. They thought he would fall in and tried to save him. C. They began praying to God. Or D. They were terrified and cried out in fear. The answer is D. They were terrified and cried out in fear. True or false? Jesus got angry with the disciples when they were afraid. A. True. B. False. The answer is B. False. Jesus did not get angry with the disciples when they were afraid. What did he say when they were afraid? A. Storm, be still. B. God will give you strength. C. Do not be afraid. Or D. Do you not know me? Jesus said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." When Peter sank, what did he do? A. He cried out for Jesus to save him. B. He swam back to the boat. C. He grabbed a life ring. Or D. He rolled to his back and floated on the water. The answer is A. He cried out for Jesus to save him. When Jesus saved Peter, what did he ask Peter? A. Why did you sink? B. Why did you doubt? C. Can you swim? Or D. Do you know who I am? The answer is B. Why did you doubt?
You have multiplied, O Lord my God, your wondrous deeds and your thoughts toward us. None can compare with you. I will proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. Psalm 40, verse 5. Now, let's try it again with some words removed and see if you can remember. You have, O Lord my God, you are wondrous and your thoughts toward us. None can, with you, I will and tell of them, yet they are, than can be told. Psalm 40, verse 5.
Hi Hi there, I'm Pastor Brian, and it's time for Questions from Kids. Julia from East Orange, New Jersey asks,
how can I have a stronger faith?
Oh, Julia, that is a question we all need to keep asking ourselves. Great question. So here's the thing. We know that faith needs to be grown. It's kind of like a muscle. Some people have called it a muscle that you have to keep exercising and stretching it so it grows and becomes stronger. And so how do we do that? Well, there are a few ways that we can do that. The first one I can think of is by spending more time in the Bible. The more we read the Bible, the more we study it, the more we understand who God is, the way He works, the greater confidence we have in Him. We know how we're to live. And so reading the Bible is perhaps one of the greatest ways you can grow in your faith. Other ways are prayer, talking with God, asking Him to grow you, asking Him to help you learn and to live on faith. Another way is by worshiping, being part of a church. This is why it's so important that we're part of a family of faith and we gather regularly and worship together and study together and talk through these things, learn from one another. But all these things lead us to this one idea that I think is really important you hear. You have to stretch your faith. You have to put yourself in positions that are uncomfortable at times to grow in that faith. Think again about muscles. Think about, lifting weights. Lifting weights is not easy. You have to strain and stretch yourself and you add more weight and there are times you're like, I don't know if I can do this, but you keep pushing. And it's through that exertion that your muscles grow stronger. If you never put weights on the barbell and just lifted an empty barbell, you're not gonna really gain muscle. So it's the same thing with our faith. If we're never stretching ourselves, if we're never stepping into those uncomfortable areas of life, if we're never sitting down with that person in the cafeteria and praying that God opens a conversation to talk about your faith with him or her, then you're not gonna grow as much. It's through those uncomfortable, stretching moments that we really grow. So I wanna encourage you to do that. Share your faith with other people. Go on mission trips. Live for Christ day by day, and you will see your faith grow by leaps and bounds, I believe, when you do that. So I hope that has been helpful, and again, that's something that we all need to be doing. So question back for you, who or what are you looking to be secure? Where is your faith found?
For this craft, you will need
a bottle of water, some oil. We are using baby oil, but any type of oil will do. Blue food coloring, sequins, glitter, pom-poms, or any other small decorative items you can put in your bottle. Start by removing about a third of the water from the bottle. You can pour it into a cup or just go the old-fashioned way and drink it. Next, add your decorative items. We're using glitter, plastic gems, and sequins. Add a few drops of blue food coloring. The larger the bottle, the more you need. We're using about 3. Finally, fill your bottle most of the way with oil. Put your cap on tightly. You can secure it in place with glue or tape. Items sink or float in water, and people sink or float. Jesus walked on the water to his friends. Jesus showed he is God's Son.
Whether cruising down highways in some of the world's largest cities or bumping along dirt roads to get to hard-to-reach villages, a missionary's daily commute can look very different from typical transportation in America. Here are some of the ways missionaries get around the world. Boats. In the Amazon jungle, dugout canoes facilitate trade and maintain communication between villages and cities. One journey can last 3 days or 3 weeks. Nevertheless, it is the only mode of transportation to further the gospel, said a missionary in Brazil. Metros. Light rail is commonplace in commutes for missionaries in the world's megacities. Metros are usually crowded, so riding the metro can be an exercise in letting go of personal space. Trains. In some locations, people spend days on the train to reach their destination. As missionaries roll across the countryside, children play with newfound friends, people swap stories, and the conductor sells ice cream. In India, the railroad is one of the country's most efficient modes of transportation. Cars. Cars are popular among the middle and upper class in South Asia, but there are a few major differences when driving a car in these countries. Missionaries must master the skill of driving on the left side of the road. Some roads are full of ruts and potholes. During the rainy season, some villages are completely inaccessible for months at a time without a four-wheel drive vehicle, said a missionary in Southeast Asia. Buses. Until recently, owning a car was too expensive for most East Asians. For the lower and middle classes, buses are affordable and accessible. In Kenya, matatus are brightly colored buses or vans operated by private owners. These vehicles are decorated with bright colors and unique decorations to get the attention of potential customers. Trucks. Trucks are a common sight in sub-Saharan and North Africa. Some missionaries serve where seatbelts are only a suggestion, and riding in the back of a truck with 14 of your closest friends is an acceptable mode of transportation. Motorbikes. Motorbikes are a useful and inexpensive means of transportation. According to a worker in South Asia, motorbike drivers go anywhere on the road they want, sidewalks, ditches, and in between cars. Another worker in Southeast Asia confessed, "Seeing multiple people on a scooter at once always makes me smile." Bicycles. Missionaries often have the opportunity to learn to balance groceries and sometimes kids as they ride through some of the biggest biking cities in the world. Missionaries in Europe say that as a result of biking, they've had conversations with other cyclists, and there has almost always been a chance to talk about Jesus. Animals. Some missionaries work with people who use more lively forms of transport, like donkeys or camels. Camels were created to survive with little water and food, making them a great choice in rugged, dry terrain, even if they do spit sometimes. Donkey carts can still be seen in many sub-Saharan African, Central Asian, and European villages. No matter the transportation, missionaries all over the world pray that God will place people in the seat next to them who need to hear about Jesus.
Why did Jesus perform miracles? Jesus performed miracles to glorify God, to show He is the Son of God, and to care for people. Today we learn that Jesus showed He is God by walking on water.
Miracles remind us of the restoration of all things that Jesus will bring when He returns to earth, to bind Satan and sin and reign forever. They are the promise of what is to come. Miracles show Jesus' power and authority and prove that He is who He says He is, the Messiah. Will you pray with me? Jesus, you show us how great you are with every wonderful work you do. Thank you for being God and for always being trustworthy. You are who you say you are, so we can trust you. There is no one like our God. We love you. Amen. Have a great week, Ronaldo kids.
Don't forget to submit your Family Challenge photos of your artwork by Friday at noon. This week's Family Challenge winners are Rachel Estes and Jordan Caudle.